Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another episode of Combat Chronicles. Now we're going to do a very quick take on Sunday's Fight Night event, and we're going to be discussing the main event on the main card, which is between Cory Sandhagen and Rob Font. Now I'm going to go through the tail of the tape first, and then I will be discussing a few of the finer details, breaking down the fight style of both fighters a little bit and talking about what it is that their approach might be like and what it is they need to be mindful of in this particular fight. So let's get started. Now here's the tail of the tape. Sandhagen has a record of 16 wins, 4 losses and 0 draws against Rob Font's record of 20 wins, 6 losses and 0 draws. Now what that tells us is something that we already know, that Rob Font is slightly more experienced than Cory Sandhagen, but as we will get into a little later when we are discussing their records, Sandhagen has lately fought a better class of fighters than Rob Font has been fighting. It's not because Rob Font is not a good fighter, it is just how the cookie was cut. So yeah. Average fight time wise, they're very close. Sandhagen has a 12-minute 37-second average fight time. Rob Font has an 11-minute 52-second fight time. Their heights are, well, this is quite an interesting aspect. Sandhagen for the bantamweight division is a very tall fighter, and I think he's the tallest fighter in the division. But Rob Font isn't exactly short himself for the division. So Sandhagen is at 5'11", Rob Font is at 5'8". Weight wise, now this fight is being held at a catch weight because initially this fight was supposed to be between number 4 ranked Cory Sandhagen and number 11 ranked Umar Nurmagomedov, who comes from Khabib Nurmagomedov's camp and is his cousin. But because of some issues with Umar Nurmagomedov, that fight fell through and Rob Font took up this fight on very short notice. Since he didn't have enough time to prepare and go through a complete fight camp, this fight was kept at a catch weight of 140 pounds. So the bantamweight division is 135 pounds, if I'm not wrong, yes. And the featherweight division, which is one division higher, is at 145 pounds. So this is right in the middle. This is at 140 pounds. So both of these fighters will cut a little less weight. They will be better hydrated and probably bring more power to the table in this particular fight. Now reach wise, one would imagine that Cory Sandhagen would have the better reach because he is the taller, longer man. But the fact of the matter is that Cory Sandhagen has a 70-inch reach against Rob Font's 71-inch reach. So there's just a 1-inch difference, but well, at least Cory Sandhagen doesn't have a very big reach advantage to add to his height advantage in this particular fight. Stance wise, Sandhagen, as we all know, if we are fight fans, I am assuming, Sandhagen is an excellent fighter who switches stances very well. So he is equally proficient from a right hand dominant orthodox stance as he is from a left hand dominant southpaw stance. He can kick from both stances. He can do these wild, unconventional, turning elbows and wheel kicks and everything that you could possibly imagine, and maybe a little more. He can do all of that from either stance. Rob Font, on the other hand, is an orthodox fighter, so he is right hand dominant and he doesn't switch stances very often unless it is required because his leg is hurt or something like that. So that was the tail of the tape, and there are a few things, especially when it comes to the stances, that I'm going to discuss a little later when we're discussing the finer details. Now let's get to the striking statistics, and this is the most important part of this analysis because the striking matchup is where both of these fighters shine, and since they're fighting each other, that is probably going to be where this fight is going to end up. Strikes landed per minute wise, Cory Sandhagen has a 5.98 strikes per minute rate, which is very good. But Rob Font has a 6.46 strikes per minute rate, which is slightly better. Striking accuracy wise, Sandhagen is 44%, Rob Font is slightly better again at 46%. Strikes absorbed per minute wise, Sandhagen absorbs 3.90 strikes per minute against 4.03 strikes per minute for Rob Font. So if you see these statistics, you see that they're very, very close, but in some cases Rob Font has a slight advantage. The fact of the matter is that is not necessarily an advantage, and I will explain why a little later. Striking defense wise, Sandhagen is at 57%, Font is at 56%. They're almost identical. We will go through the grappling, although that's not really a big part of this particular fight, but anyway, since we are here, we will get through it. Takedown average per minute, per 15 minutes wise, Sandhagen is at 0.89 and Rob Font is at 1.01. Now, if initiating the takedown is what we are focusing on, then I would say Rob Font has an advantage. It's a very slight advantage on paper, but I think he is better at initiating takedowns. The caveat here though is Sandhagen is known for his scrambles. So the space between the start of the takedown and the part where he is on the ground and being controlled by his opponent, the time in the middle of that is the scramble, where things are in a bit of a limbo, everything's gone up for a toss and anything can happen. And in those scrambles, in those situations, Sandhagen is usually the one who changes his momentum physically and turns that disadvantage into an advantage and escapes a grappling exchange that somebody else has initiated or ends up on top, which is why he has a lower takedown average, but he has a very, very good takedown defense at 64% against Rob Font's 55%. Takedown accuracy wise, Sandhagen is at 21% against Rob Font's 36%. So like I said, Sandhagen is not initiating as many grappling exchanges, he's not trying to take his opponents down as much, but he's very good at defending that same thing coming from his opponent. Submission average per 15 minute wise, Sandhagen is at 0.3, Rob Font is at 0.4. So it is not that they're not very good submission artists in their own right, but that is not a major part of their game. So that is not something that we should be focusing on for this particular fight. Maybe if one of them has seen a chink in the other's armor and they decide to exploit that by using a submission, then we might see that happen, or at least that being attempted, but I do not think that is going to be the case. If you look at the record, so if you look at the last 5 fights, Sandhagen has a win against Chito Vera. Before that, he had a win against Song Yudong. Before that, he had a loss to Piotr Jan. Before that, he had a loss to Dillashaw, TJ Dillashaw, the former champion. Before that, he had a win against Frankie Edgar, who is a legend and has retired now. So, compared to Rob Font's last 5 fights, in which he had a win against Yanis, before which he had a loss to Chito Vera, before which he had a loss to Jose Aldo, before which he had a win against Cody Garbrandt, before which he had a win against Moraes. So if you pit these two records against each other, I would say that looking at the current climate, Sandhagen has fought the upper echelons of the bantamweight division as it is now, whereas Rob Font has fought the upper echelons of the bantamweight division from a slightly earlier time. That does not mean that he hasn't fought excellent fighters, he has, but Sandhagen has practiced against the best of this very moment, whereas Rob Font has fought people who are excellent, but some of them have retired, some of them were ex-champions, so there is a slight difference. I think, speaking on the current moment, Sandhagen has slightly better experience against the best of the best in the division. But Rob Font is very, very good. His record is very, very good. So, yeah, that might be something psychological, but I don't think that is going to translate into a physical advantage. The one thing I'm going to mention though is that both of them have fought against Chito Vera and Sandhagen won that fight, whereas Rob Font lost that fight to Chito Vera. So if you know Chito Vera, you know he's one of the best fighters in the division, but he doesn't strike at a very high rate. He doesn't start fights very, very quickly, and he picks up momentum as the fight goes along. Now, Chito Vera has this thing where he wants to hit you very, very hard, and he does. He breaks something every time he hits his opponents, and he usually knocks his opponents out. But in a case like when he went up against Cory Sandhagen, if you cannot knock your opponent out and the opponent is very mobile as Sandhagen is and is a very good striker with a high rate of striking, then he will win on points, which is what Cory Sandhagen did. He beat Chito Vera on points. Rob Font, on the other hand, lost to Vera. And the difference between these two fighters was Rob Font has a very traditional style of fighting or striking. That does not mean he is not technical. He is very, very technical. He has excellent boxing. He has good kicks. He likes to close the distance and hit you from close range. He's very good at that. But that is tailor-made for somebody like Chito Vera, whereas Sandhagen is mobile. He only comes into range when he wants to, and he usually sets the pace of the fight. So he will initiate exchanges when he knows he is at an advantage and stay out of range otherwise, and use his movement, his stance switches to stay positionally viable and at an advantage. So that is something that Rob Font will have to be careful of. He'll have to figure that out. Let's get into the finer points of this so that I can explain that exact point to you a little better. So we're going to go through the styles of fighting and the advantages and disadvantages, the things that either fighter needs to be careful of and employ. In the case of Sandhagen, so he is the more versatile and unpredictable fighter. He can do anything at any given moment. He can switch stances while he is hitting you. So as an opponent, you don't even realize that he has switched stances and now he is in a better position and you're at a disadvantage because you're too busy with the strikes coming your way. He is very, very unconventional in his striking. So he uses all sorts of, fancy wheel kicks and spinning elbows and spinning back fists and all sorts of weird strikes that you sometimes don't even expect. So it is difficult to see what is coming your way if you are his opponent. He switches stances seamlessly, like I said, and he is equally capable of striking you with his full arsenal from an orthodox right-hand dominant stance or a southpaw left-hand dominant stance. So he is equally proficient from either stance, and he switches between them very well. So sometimes you don't even realize that he's changed stances. He has, like I said, he has exceptional movement. So he's very, very, very mobile. His feet keep moving constantly, and he's constantly pitter-pattering you and coming out, hitting you, coming out. And he has very good lateral movement. So he is not always going to come straight at you and exit straight back. He might come straight and exit in any direction. He might come in from any direction and exit any which way. So he is hard to track down and he's hard to pin down. So for somebody like Rob Font, who is a traditional fighter who likes to walk his opponents down, it is going to be a little hard for him to get into close range with Cory Sandhagen, which is why he will have to use leg kicks, which is going to add into the next point that I'm going to make. So Cory Sandhagen needs to defend leg kicks to maintain his movement, because the most obvious thing Rob Font is going to do is kick his legs, kick him in the knee, kick him in the calf, try and mangle his legs so that he cannot move as well and he loses his mobility. When he loses his mobility, then Rob Font can come at him and close in the distance and be in that close range where he is best, and Sandhagen might be at a slight disadvantage. Also because Rob Font is the stronger fighter, so he has the more potent knockout power in his hands, in his legs. Sandhagen also strikes very well. He is very strong. He can knock you out. But especially when it comes to boxing, Cory Sandhagen doesn't have as much power as Rob Font does. Although he can knock you out with a knee or a kick just as well as anybody else. A feature of Cory Sandhagen's fighting style is that he manages momentum swings very well. So if you watch any fight in any combat sport, you realize that in a competitive fight there are moments where the momentum shifts into one fighter's direction and then shifts into another fighter's direction, and usually the winner is decided when one fighter starts taking the momentum towards him and it slowly keeps building in his direction, and he just takes the fight away from the other fighter. And that is usually what the case is. So initially in every fight the momentum swings a bit, and then all of a sudden one fighter takes the fight away. That is very hard to do with Cory Sandhagen because he has this realization. Every time the momentum is going towards his opponent's direction, he does something to try and pull it back, and he usually manages to do so. So, if the fight is going your way and you're fighting against Cory Sandhagen, you cannot say that this is how it will keep going, because he will make a conscious decision to quickly make the momentum swing the other way. Another thing about Cory, which I spoke about during the wrestling stats, is that he is excellent in scrambles. So like I said, the space between the initiation of the takedown and the time when you're on your back and the opponent is on top of you controlling you, the space in between that, the scramble, is where Cory Sandhagen changes the picture of the whole grappling exchange, and he'll either exit the exchange or turn it around and put you on the ground. So he's very, very good at that. He does these front rolls and other kinds of rolls that when he's being taken down, he just rolls away with the momentum of that takedown and gets out of the opponent's range or grip. Another thing about Sandhagen is that he sets the pace of the fight very, very well. So quite often, especially in fights where he is doing well, he decides when the striking exchange is going to happen and when it's not going to happen by using his movement. So he will move away when he doesn't want to engage and he knows he's at a disadvantage, and then come into range and hit you when he knows he's at an advantage. That is something that Rob Font will have to mitigate as his opponent. And like I said, Rob Font is very, very powerful, so Sandhagen needs to be careful of his power. Although Sandhagen is a very sneaky striker, so he's very smart, and often you cannot tell what he's going to do, so you can't see the strikes coming, and he counters very well. So that is a big advantage when you're fighting somebody like Rob Font, who wants to come at you and wants to get into close range. You can use that forward movement that the opponent is giving you, and you can plan and lay a counter on him whenever it suits you fit, which is something that Sandhagen is very good at. So that is something Rob Font will have to be careful of. He can't just walk into Sandhagen, because he'll get hit by a knee or a switch knee or a kick or something that will damage him or maybe even take him out of the fight. And like I said, the Vera fight was a good example of what both fighters are capable of, because Chito Vera was very careful around Cory Sandhagen and he couldn't strike him as often, which is why he couldn't knock him out. And usually if Chito Vera is not knocking you out, then I apologize. If Chito Vera is not knocking you out, you are going to win on points, most likely. So when he fought Sandhagen, that is what happened. Sandhagen used his movement and he stayed out of the way. He hit him more often and took the fight away on points. Whereas when Chito Vera fought Rob Font, the story was different, because Rob Font was coming right at him and Chito got every opportunity to hit him hard, which is what Chito likes to do, and try and knock him out. In fact, if you go back to that fight, you will see that Chito Vera damaged Rob Font's face horribly. He was bleeding all over the place. So we've discussed all of that. We've discussed Cory Sandhagen's fighting style and how he will approach it. Let's get into Rob Font's fighting style. So even though Rob Font isn't as unconventional and he doesn't have as many weapons in his arsenal as Cory Sandhagen does, the one thing that Rob Font is very good at is boxing and setting up strikes. So he's a very conventional but excellent technical fighter, and he sets up his strikes very, very well. So he might hit you in the torso, in the gut, to try and get your guard down and hit you up top. He will set up a left uppercut to the body, keep hitting you over and over again, and when your natural reaction is to bring your hands down to protect from that shot, every time you see the uppercut coming, in the last moment he will bring it up to your face and you won't know what hit you. So he does those things very, very well. He has a very, very good lead hook. So even though he's an orthodox fighter, his left hand lead hook is very strong. He's knocked plenty of people out with it, and he can literally snap your jaw in half with that, because he has this technique where when he hits you, he's also twisting into that movement, and he does a lot of damage with that specific technique of his, where he lands his lead hook that way. He does lack versatility though. So I mean, I'm not saying that he lacks versatility in general. What I'm saying is, when it comes to somebody like Cory Sandhagen, he's not as versatile as Cory, because he's not hitting you with spinning elbows and spinning back fists, and he's not jumping off of the cage to kick you, or he's not trying wheel kicks on you. He's not going to fly at you from 3 feet, 4 feet away and try to land a knee on your face. He's not doing that stuff. But he's fighting you in a very technical, conventional style, where he's walking forward, he's setting up his strikes, and he's boxing you in an excellent manner. And yes, he's planting all of that huge, humongous power that he has on you. And like I said, he's very, very good at close range. Even though his reach is just as much as Cory Sandhagen's, despite him being shorter than Cory, he does not use that reach. What he does is he gets close to you and then he hits you from that close range. So Cory has to be mindful of that. He is not bad in close range. He is very, very good. But Rob Font is a lot better in close range. That is where he thrives, and he has nasty elbows. So if he does get close to you, he's going to hit you with these elbows that will slash, cut and break you apart. So yeah, I don't think Sandhagen would want that. So he should stick to his movement. He should stay on his bicycle and keep moving all over the octagon and striking where it suits him best. Now, Rob Font has very good footwork, especially at close range. So you might imagine that at close range you don't really need very good footwork, but in that tight space it is actually a little more difficult to use your footwork and improve your position when needed, and Rob Font is very good at that. So yeah, do not get into close range with Rob Font if you're Cory Sandhagen. And the one thing though is that he often gets caught by counters. So like I said, when I was talking about Cory Sandhagen, who's an excellent counter striker, Rob Font will walk at you and he'll just come at you, and that makes him susceptible to getting countered, and that is something that he will have to make sure does not happen in this fight, because that's what Cory Sandhagen is very, very good at. So he will have to make sure that he takes this bad trait of his and is a little more careful in his approach, or that he closes the range well enough and quickly enough to not take too much damage and then get into close range and start laying damage on Sandhagen. And like I said, when I was talking about Sandhagen needs to protect his legs to keep his movement intact. Rob Font needs to kick his legs to take away his movement and close the range on him. And he has to use his boxing and elbows in close range very well, because even though he has an advantage in close range, Sandhagen is no slouch. He can elbow you and knee you in close range very, very well, and because he's long, he has a snap to his shots that most people do not in that particular division. So Rob Font will have to keep the pressure on him and keep striking him consistently to keep him engaged and not have strikes coming back his way, even at close range where he is specifically better. And yes, Rob Font has amazing power, especially for a smaller guy. I mean, he's not small, he's 5'8", but he's a bantamweight, so for that division he has excellent power. I think if he goes up to featherweight, he could still knock a lot of guys out, like knock their sparks out, because he carries that kind of power in his hands, and that is a joy to watch. My pick in this fight would be Cory Sandhagen, because he's a lot more in his arsenal than Rob Font does. But I wouldn't be surprised if Rob Font hits him with something that completely takes him out of the fight. Yet, my choice is Cory Sandhagen. I hope you enjoy the fight. I hope you like the review. And if you have any comments, if you have any suggestions, if you want to discuss something, please go down into the comment section and let me know what you think about this particular fight. If there are any other fights on the card that you're interested in, we can talk about those as well. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and see you next time.